welcome back to the class, everyone. 3v3 is upon us once again, and one of the most challenging aspects of it is bridging the galactic legend gap between you and your opponent. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about and tackling the top 10 teams that aren't galactic legends that can take down galactic legends in 3v3. So first off, we have to get through these three awkward teams. And the reason why I call them awkward isn't because they're bad. In fact, it's quite the contrary. They're very good. But it's almost a little bit unfair to talk about these three teams as if they aren't galactic legends, because technically they aren't. If you want to click on them and go into their tabs and whatnot, you'll see it's very clear. Well, I guess you won't see very clear because my head's in the way. But you can see here that there aren't any galactic legend tags. That being said, the reason why I think it's a little bit unfair to call these un-GL or non-GL counters is because if you see, they all have these nice little specific things called Grand Arena Omicrons, where they come in and they are not just on accident, but specifically engineered by the developers of the game to be able to take down galactic legends in 3v3 or 5v5 and whatever game mode that they have the Omicron in. So we will address that, but we can't really not talk about them because they are some of the most important teams, and most of them really don't require a higher investment than a galactic legend, which at the end of the day, that's what this video is really about. We're talking about building a roster that doesn't cost as many resources to be able to take down things that are larger than you, where there's been a higher investment made, so you can, again, get the best bang for your buck with what you are farming. So these are the first ones we need to talk about, and I want to talk about Starkiller first, because I feel like when we look at him, we have a tendency to say this is a ray counter, and that is true. Starkiller is a fantastic ray counter, even with all the weird variations that we've been seeing as of recently, either with Ben Swallow or Sortie or Cal. This comp in particular just has it out for Ray. One of the things that is making a bigger difference now than it was before is the Force Repulse that is dispelling all buffs on all enemies. This makes really tricky things where they'll either have taunts or multiple things to dispel to be able to get rid of the crit avoidance so you can take out the Inspired. This makes the AoE dispel an AoE, so you end up taking care of the crit avoidance on Ray immediately without really having to worry about it, because then you get to get those stacks Inspired off of her and she doesn't gain a whole butt ton of offense. That being said, it is a ray counter, but it also can be used against SLKR comps that don't have Hux. As soon as Hux is removed from the equation, you can start to gain turn meter, which that's really more of an Emperor Palpatine and Mara Jade thing. That'll help you to kind of loop around. SLKR cannot stun anyone on the opener move because of Starkiller's unique, so that is very helpful for us when using it. It can also beat a lot of different JML comps, although you will need to weather a little bit of the storm with the ability blocks right out the front, and then it can even be used to counter some of the other galactic legends if they have a weaker format in, or just a really bad datacron or mods like Jabba. Jabba's actually a pretty good candidate to be beat by Starkiller too if they start to go leaner on what they have, specifically by taking out Boosh or doing something of the sort. So that is Starkiller, really the best non-galactic team, that galactic legend team that takes out galactic legends. Next up is going to be Inquisitors. They're not terribly far behind our good friend Starkiller, but they beat a fewer amount of legends. That being said, they do one specific thing that Starkiller just can't really seem to do, and it's no shade against him, but this will beat JMK, and not just JMK, but JMK Cat, and then pretty much any version of Jedi Master Luke out there, even the really dumb one with Bastille and Watt. They just have every single tool in the buck to do it, and let's face it, that's actually just CG kind of getting the lore part of this right, where Inquisitors' whole purpose was to hunt Jedi, so they're good, therefore, against Jedi Master Luke and Jedi Master Kenobi. They do fall short against most of the other galactic legends, at least in 3v3. They have a tendency to be able to retain that viability in 5v5 when they're given more tools with the other two members, but for threes, that's really where their bread and butter is, and they can't be left on defense. The only issue with that is if your opponent has the Trey Omicron, well, that's not a good trade for you. You don't want Trey Omicron to be eating that on your end. Now, so we've talked a lot about offensive viability for these two because this is a video about countering galactic legends, and it's hard to counter something when you put it on defense. But Malgus is the next team up, and while Malgus will just kind of destroy JML, and that's super great, this to me is a defensive team. And the reason why, different from the other two teams that we've already talked about, it will only really take on one of the 7 galactic legends, and if your opponent doesn't place it on defense, then I guess I guess you try to kill Reva if they put that on defense too, and that's great. That's actually decent value. But if they don't put either of those two teams down, then what are you doing? You're making a bad trade. You're going to end up using it on like a CLS or a weaker comp like that. So I like this on defense because it almost immediately calls out a Galactic Legend, specifically Sith Eternal, who could take on something larger, but instead he kind of gets stuck with this trade every single time. And the reason I do like putting Darth Revan and Bastila Shan Fallen in here is because when you go with the weaker comps, and this is very popular right now, and I get it because they're trying to make multiple teams. When you go with the weaker comp with, like, let's say, the really common comp that I saw is Marauder and Talon, this is okay, but if you're up against a good player who knows what they're doing, Jedi Knight Luke and Mace or Gas will just take this entire team to town with almost no issues. The Darth Revan and Bastila Shan Fallen being added in there adds quite a bit of complexity, and the team's overall defensive viability shoots way up. So I guess that depends on who you're going against, what other teams you have to spare to be able to put on defense to fill out your board, but this is the variation of the team that I like the most, and is making these three teams the most potent against Galactic Legends. The next list, so we talked about those three teams, and they're all specifically engineered with multiple GAC Omicrons, so they kind of got into their own territory. I want to talk now about 7 more teams that weren't specifically engineered to beat Galactic Legends, but they're just so good, or they have the specific interaction at hand to be able to allow them to do that in some circumstances. These aren't in order by any way, or by anyways, just want to put that out there. So, and this is one of the things that I actually like about 3v3, and we're going to talk about Wampa here for a second. Wampa, it is a lot harder for him to have any chance against Galactic Legends in 5v5, because whenever he's going up against Sith Eternal, for example, if any one of the 4 friends has something that kind of cancels Wampa out, like if they have Watt there is with Sith Empire Trooper, and he gets to throw the tech on him and cleanses it and you can never kill him, or Savage is there and you can never kill him, or if Malik is there and you're permafeared, that all kind of ruins Wampa versus Sith Eternal. One of the nice things about 3v3 and C, he only has 2 buddies, and if both of his buddies are quite useless, like Marauder or Talon or Count Dooku or Maul or whatever it is, he gets to eat that team alive, giving him a lot more viability. And not to mention, he can actually take down JMK as well as some weaker Rey teams if they are the only opponent out there. One of the nice things about his GAC Omicron is it does give him some really nice boosts in general if he's the only one on his side. But one of the important things that we need to take into account, if there is only one opponent at the beginning of the battle, these values are doubled, which means if you take him against a solo JMK, he actually can have the to be able to kill him. And then again, if you kind of play your cards right, he can even take out solo Reys. Don't try that against full comp, you'll lose. Cat will gladly eat your Wampa right out the gate. So that is the first team we need to talk about, is Wampa against Galactic Legends, primarily CS, who he's going to counter. Omicron Central, and this is going to begin a theme that I'm not super happy about, but it's going to be in the theme of just trashing on Jedi Master Luke as a defensive comp in general. I realize he's a Galactic Legend, and a Galactic Legend is going to be somewhat decent when they put them on defense, but he's going to feel a little bit bad when you're going to look at what you can trade against him, and one of the teams is going to be the Taloncron. So we have Trey here, Darth Talon, as well as Savage Press. I said Taloncron, I meant Treyacron. But if you put this whole team together, it starts to become a massive pain in the butt for Jedi Master Luke to take down. You can isolate Jedi Master Luke, and then you can start going after his buddies with both Darth Talon as well as Savage Press, and you will be a little bit surprised just how much damage this team can actually ramp up when you start looking at everything that Treyacron and Savage Kron are doing to give the team damage, offense and crit damage over time. It does add up, and I will, for all of you Taloncron enthusiasts, and I know that we've had some fun times in the accounts before, but for all you Taloncron enthusiasts, this is actually the one example, in my opinion, where Taloncron really does come in handy, because there's a lot of arguments out there like, oh, Talon's defense or offense matters. It really doesn't, unless you don't have Nihilus on the team and you're fighting a Galactic Legend, and bada bing, bada boom, this is that perfect example where you do actually have to rely a little bit on our offense to be able to take them down. That being said, Talon, even without the Omicron, should be able to kill the JML once you get it weak enough, but that sometimes can take time, and you time out, and then that's no fun. So this team is really going to shine. It will fail pretty miserably against a lot of the dark side Galactic Legends because they made sure to turn her Omicron off. Thank you, Lord Vader. Speaking of Lord Vader, we're going to be talking about his kind of crutch right now, or not crutch, but his weakness is going to be this Fennec comp. With Fennec, Grief Karga, and Beskar Armor Mando. This is one of the older comps right now. The reason why Beskar has to be here is because the enemy team, Lord Vader team, has a Maul on it, and he gets to go berserk in the very beginning, almost kill someone. Luckily, Beskar can actually save them due to his unique Zeta. Whenever someone falls below 75 health, or rather a scoundrel, which your whole team is because they're bounty hunters, he'll be able to put damage immunity on and save them. And then, I mean, this team was just written to beat Lord Vader, and in fact, it really was, because this whole team was meant to go with Dad Bod Boba and TW to do exactly that. And even without Dad Bod Boba, it does pretty well, especially in 3s. When if you start to look at Fennec's leadership, her leadership is actually in 5s garbage, other than the contract. That's the whole reason we use it. But if you start to read this, at the start of the battle, she gains all these boosts, and then you lose 25% of those boosts for each ally present. So basically, if you go in with a full team with her in 5s, her lead does nothing. It just nets out at 0. Hashtag math. That being said, in 3s, you get to keep 50% of the max protection, max health, offense. Pretty big deal there. And that is just really nice to be able to take down Lord Vader. I will also say this comp has a chance to beat Inquisitors as well, specifically the Reva team, if you swap out Grief for the other Mando, because there's a way that you can do it where you cleanse everything, you give the turn to your Mando, and then he is able to annihilate Reva because he already has contract, and he got to live because he had damage immunity from your other Mandalorian. So that's what that team does. Next up, Aphra, and this is, I guess, slightly awkward to talk about as well. Aphra, in her current state, really doesn't beat any Galactic Legends in 3v3. So why is she on the list? She is on the list because she cleans up 5 of them. She just has all the mechanics necessary to really get the jump on the opponent. Her unique ability, or I think it's her unique or leadership. Either way, she's allowed to come in with a bonus turn at the very beginning, or rather a turn meter mechanic to get her up in the very beginning. She can increase the enemy's cooldowns and start to get some nice debuffs on them, like Doubt. And then you can follow up with our good friend 000 here. He does have this really nice mechanic called Torture, which not only keeps the opponent from gaining turn meter, but also just lowers their overall defense, which against the Galactic Legend is really nice. Our good friend here, B21, is going to be the one to actually get the kill shot. So versus pretty much everything that isn't named Lord Vader and Rey, these 3 will clean up. If it's Jabba, if it's JMK, if it's JML, it doesn't matter. They have enough offense. They have the right tools to be able to go in there and do it pretty consistently. They won't be the full team, but that's kind of okay. Gas is up next, and this is probably the weakest link on the entire list. And that's not to say that General Skywalker is a bad team. He's not. But the team that he's kind of made to build in 3v3 is Galactic Legend Rey, and that one is just so challenging. And the reason why we have ARC Trooper here is to help bridge that gap a little bit. If you know anything about ARC Trooper's blaster turn here, he will dispel all buffs on target enemy and deal true damage to them. This is super nice because not only can you dispel the crit immunity on them and then, you know, hit them harder, but every single time you crit them, you're going to be removing Inspired. And if you can remove Inspired, you can remove all the really nasty things they do, like dodge and just gain absurd amounts of offense. Basically, how this works is you have to play it in such a way that General Skywalker is always standing when Rey comes around trying to murder someone, whether it be through her whirlwind or through her ultimate ability. As long as he's standing, nothing else really matters. That's not even really mod dependent, although I do like having good mods on General Skywalker. But that's where he's going to shine. And then he will also beat up JMKs without Cat, or maybe even some JMLs other that Bastila lead that gain a lot of buffs that provide him with more damage throughout the battle. This one is very nice. I'm not sure how many of you are still seeing SLKR on defense, but for any times you are, this counter right here is very clutch. And it's very organized specifically to how SLKR's AI works. How it's built is he's always going to want to go after Jedi Knight Revan first. And if you play this correctly, you can put the 3 stacks of Beskar into Jedi Knight Revan, essentially making him immortal. And then SLKR is going to keep targeting him, even on the AoE, and reducing his mastery and not his. And the reason why this is so vital is because Jedi Knight Luke's mastery, this is so stupid, his mastery is accuracy. In other words, if SLKR is allowed to siphon Jedi Knight Luke's mastery, not only will he do like no damage, but he just won't hit him at all because all of his accuracy is gone, and Jedi Knight Luke's hits really aren't unavoidable for the most part, so you just kind of get screwed on that one. So if you do put the Beskar on Jedi Knight Revan, make him essentially unkillable because he can't be crit, and that's where most of SLKR's damage is going to come from, then he takes the bruit of the damage, and then Giant Luke gets to go in and get the kill shot on the Galactic Legend. Very powerful, potent team. You can swap armor for Hondo, but the win rates do go down drastically. I realize she's a little more of a niche character, but again, the whole point of this list is to be more so for roster building and to put your stuff together rather than it is execution. And last, and maybe least, I don't know, is going to be Dash Rendar. And Hondo isn't specific to this team, but once you understand what we're trying to do here, you'll understand why we're using him. So the whole point of this is to use this against the Jedi Master Luke and just abuse the crap out of the bad AI. So if you know Vader Chewbacca's Zeta, I actually don't even know if it's Zeta. Oh, it is. Whenever a light side scoundrel ally is defeated, revive that ally at 60% health if he is prepared. Dash's Omicron pretty much makes sure that Vader is prepared the entire match. So what this is going to mean is the AI is really dumb. They want to take out the attacker first, so they're constantly killing Dash. He's coming back every single time. And eventually, if you have a third that will build up enough offense, you can just shatter the entire Jedi Master Luke team. The other options for this team are like old school, or not old school, but young Lando and young Han who build up offense over time. The reason why we're not really talking about them is because I'm not going to expect or ask most of you viewers to go and relic 5 or 7 or 8 young Lando or young Han. You can do that. That's great if you want to use Hondo elsewhere. But Hondo works just as good in this comp. Well, it's a little bit deceiving at first because you're like, haha, Calvin, you don't know what you're talking about. You can't captive Galactic Legends. True. Kind of don't care. Because the whole point of Hondo being here is that he is supposed to get absurd stacks of his ransom, and then eventually he's going to stack so much defense penetration, critical damage, and critical chance that he's just going to start, not necessarily one-shotting, but he's going to be doing enough damage to not only take down Jedi Master Luke's sides, but Jedi Master Luke himself. And then also he gets a bunch of turn meter at the very beginning, so that's kind of fun to get things going off. So he's not really there for the captive, he's there for the stacking damage, which at the end of the day, that's kind of what young Han and young Lando were there for as well, because they both do really good damage over time. So that is going to be our list for today. These are the top 10 teams that can take down Galactic Legends without having to be Galactic Legends themselves. Let me know if there's some secret other comp out there that you guys love that's been really helpful for you guys. But until the next time, stay awesome.